Uh, to get things up to date, I think most of you know that not long ago, President Jovenel Moïse was violently assassinated by a team of commandos. That's still being investigated. See who was behind that. Any combination of corporate, political, or narco trafficking is the likely part of it. But it really, popular or not, the death of this president may as well have been the death of Kennedy for the Haitians. They knew that it meant darkness was coming, that the hope that had been beginning to be rebuilt post-2010 earthquake was now in great peril. And only a couple of weeks after that, another over 7.0 earthquake in the southeast. We as an organization, I think most of you will relate to this in terms of, any of those of you who have been activists on any level. It's not my favorite word, but citizens, proactive citizens. We are typically drawn to be invested in the macro, but with all that has fallen into the hands of gangs and violence, and an almost feudal surface in Haiti today, with all that's happened in the last couple of months, and in fact the last couple of years, we really as CORE stay with our initial intention, which is to focus on the micro. By empowering the most broad-based societal democratic solutions and having the courage to move beyond supporting the same corrupt elite actors, the United States could boost the conditions for the Haitians to reverse their dire circumstances. Support for security is vital. The gangs have a stranglehold on major population centers, but they are not the Taliban. Here, proper resourcing can fairly quickly diffuse their activities. We've seen macro development from outside Haiti fail repeatedly. We've got to invest in community-driven programming that Haitians have always requested, and invest in COVID-19 vaccinations for Haiti. That's my direct address related to Haiti, and I'll just touch on some other regions in Brazil. Vaccines. I know that Lunel went through some of this. It's quieter, and I appreciate it, and I think everyone will appreciate the rest of the night, because we've got not only, I think valuable things from the podium to share, but also some extraordinary entertainment. Since 2021, CORE has provided 400,000 COVID-19 vaccinations in Rio de Janeiro. Support for new mothers, food distributions, and it's been an honor to work with the grassroots organizations there who show us the way. Finally, I just want to thank some people. In the United States, continental United States, I believe we had about 7 full-time staff as we went into the COVID-19 pandemic. Within 11 months, we were at 3,000 CORE staff. That was a big HR challenge, and so I just want to do a shout out to all of our HR specialists. And of course, my co-founder, who's been my mentor since I first landed in Haiti, Ann Lee. Then there's a CORE volunteer both in Haiti and the United States here tonight, who it gives me great pleasure to have here, and that is the lovely Dylan Penn. And then it's really such a pleasure to have one of the trench fighters that we had from the very beginning of the COVID pandemic here in the U.S. and who very quickly moved straight into being the chief of staff of Van Lee as we built this COVID response, Layla George. For those of you who don't know Soleiman Fry, you're fucked. Because Cora would have been fucked without her every day, like an Energizer battery made of a human heart. And then there's Argentina's and Miami's own Alan Faina. Thank you. Cece Reines, who's here and who back in the trenches back in Haiti used to beat me up. You know, you're not making sure your security people are trained enough, and so she hired training officers. Has been a great support and spirit in our organization. Of course, Anita, who is hosting and who we will see later. Thank you. Patricia Velasquez, thank you. Craig Robbins, we'll talk later. Thank you. Of course, Lunel. Are you there? Okay. Yeah. Francesco Costa. Thank you. Again, thank you, Lori Lynn Stark, and all the generous people who contributed to tonight's auction. Now, as I wrap up, I'm going to wrap up on one thing. Who didn't see The Godfather? Okay, so even though he was portrayed very romantically, I think it's fair to say he wasn't good. Tonight we have with us my great friend, truly, without whom certainly the COVID response couldn't have happened, because it was his work with us and his introducing us to people and his mentoring and friendship and love. This extraordinary person who I don't know if I've ever heard him say a bad word about anybody, and nobody that I know says a bad word about him, and if they do, we got business together, because this guy is the godfather of good. And I hope maybe I can get him up here to say a few words if he feels like it. If not, no pressure. But thank you, Vivi Nevo. You good? You want to come up? We'll say one more. Okay, so Lunel, you'll find the time for Vivi to come up after he's had another drink, because I think Anita's great, but as great a guy as Vivi is, he's also extremely entertaining. So we may have a bonus with it. All right, thank you.
Please welcome back Lunel.